There comes a moment in every person's life when they must confront an uncomfortable truth. The world is not filled exclusively with those who wish us well. More troubling still is the realization that some patterns of human behavior, repeated across centuries and cultures, present dangers that are as predictable as they are profound. For years I have studied the nature of human consciousness, drawing from both Eastern and Western traditions, observing the masks we wear and the games we play, often without even knowing we are playing them. What I've discovered is both liberating and sobering. There are archetypal patterns, personality configurations, if you will, that appear again and again throughout human history. These patterns transcend culture, geography, and time. They are as old as consciousness itself. Now, before we go further, let me be absolutely clear about what this journey entails. This is not about cultivating cynicism or hardening your heart against humanity. This is not an invitation to become paranoid or to view every human interaction through a lens of suspicion. Life is fluid, complex, and endlessly nuanced. People change, circumstances evolve, and human beings contain multitudes that often contradict themselves. We must not become rigid in our thinking or hasty in our judgments. But here is the essential truth that we must embrace if we are to navigate this world with wisdom rather than wishful thinking. Certain personality types require extreme caution, not because they are evil in some cosmic sense, but because their very nature, their fundamental way of relating to reality and to other people, creates patterns of behavior that will inevitably cause harm to those who fail to see them clearly. Let me offer you a parable that will serve as the foundation for everything that follows. Consider the story of the scorpion and the frog. A scorpion asks a frog to carry it across a river. The frog hesitates, saying, "How do I know you won't sting me?" The scorpion replies, "Because if I sting you, we'll both drown." The frog, satisfied with this logic, agrees. Halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog. As they both begin to sink, the frog asks, "Why? Now we'll both die." The scorpion responds, "I couldn't help it. It's my nature." This story illuminates the crucial distinction between malice and nature. The scorpion did not sting out of hatred or intentional evil. It stung because that is what scorpions do. The tragedy lies not in the scorpion's action, but in the frog's failure to recognize the nature of what he was dealing with. To trust a scorpion not to sting is not compassion. It is delusion. And delusion, however well-intentioned, leads to suffering. The journey you are about to undertake will transform the way you see people. You will learn to recognize patterns that have been invisible to you, to understand the games being played beneath the surface of social interaction, and most importantly, to protect yourself without becoming cynical or closed off to genuine human connection. The goal is not to judge, but to see clearly, not to condemn, but to understand, and through understanding, to make wiser choices about whom you allow into the intimate spaces of your life. By the end of this exploration, you will possess a framework for recognizing these patterns in real time, understanding the psychological mechanisms that drive them, and making conscious decisions about how to respond. You will see without illusions, which is perhaps the greatest gift you can give yourself. Let us begin with the first and perhaps most pervasive of these patterns. The perpetual victim lives in a world where nothing is ever their fault. Their entire identity is constructed around suffering. For them, pain is not just an experience to move through, but a badge of honor, a source of meaning, and most dangerously, a tool for manipulation and control. When you first encounter the perpetual victim, you may feel drawn to help them. They tell stories of misfortune, betrayal, and injustice with such conviction that your natural compassion is activated. You want to be the one who finally helps them break free from their cycle of suffering. And here lies the trap. the mechanism that ensnares good-hearted people again and again. The perpetual victim does not actually want solutions. They want validation. They want an audience for their suffering. They want someone to agree that the world is against them, that they have been uniquely wronged, that their pain is special and profound. Watch what happens when you offer practical solutions to their problems. Notice how they deflect, how they explain why your suggestions won't work, how they find new problems or complications that make change impossible. This is not conscious manipulation in most cases. The perpetual victim has built their entire psychological structure around the identity of sufferer. To solve their problems would be to lose their sense of self, to give up the one thing that makes them feel special and gives them leverage in relationships. They need an enemy. This is crucial to understand. The narrative requires a villain, and this role rotates among the people in their lives in a predictable pattern. First, you are the rescuer, the savior, the one person who truly understands them. They idealize you, praise your kindness, make you feel special for caring when others have given up on them. But inevitably, the dynamic shifts. You will eventually disappoint them, fail to rescue them completely, or worse, hold them accountable for their part in their own suffering. And when this happens, you transform from savior to oppressor, from the one who understood to the one who betrayed them. The same intensity with which they praised you will now fuel their condemnation of you. Why must you not trust the perpetual victim? Because they are fundamentally incapable of taking responsibility for their own lives. And anyone who cannot see their role in their own suffering is condemned to repeat it endlessly. They will drain your energy, manipulate your compassion, and ultimately blame you for failing to fix what they have never intended to heal. The relationship is not mutual. It is parasitic. You give, and they take and take, all while maintaining that they are the one who is suffering. There is a profound poverty of spirit in this pattern, a refusal to grow up and face the hard truth that we are all, to some degree, responsible for the quality of our own experience. Until the perpetual victim is willing to look at themselves honestly, they will remain trapped in their cycle, and they will trap anyone foolish enough to believe they can be the exception, the one who finally saves them. Now we come to the second pattern, and this one is particularly insidious because it wears the mask of charm so convincingly. The chronic manipulator has turned human relationships into a game of chess. They are students of human nature, but not in the service of connection or understanding. They study people to find leverage points, weaknesses, desires that can be exploited for personal gain. When you first meet them, you may be dazzled by their charisma, their apparent interest in you, their ability to make you feel seen and valued. But pay attention to what lies beneath the surface. Notice how they always seem to get what they want. Notice how conversations somehow end with you agreeing to things you hadn't intended to agree to. Notice how you often feel guilty or pressured in their presence, even when there is no logical reason for these feelings. The chronic manipulator operates through a complex system of emotional exchanges that always leave them in profit. They give gifts with invisible strings attached. They do favors that they will later remind you of, subtly or overtly, when they need something from you. They compliment you, but watch closely, and you'll notice the compliments often precede requests. They are masters of reading emotional states and adjusting their behavior accordingly, not out of genuine empathy, but as a strategic adaptation. If you need reassurance, they provide it, but only to build credit they'll spend later. If you need someone to listen, they listen, but they're cataloging information, filing away details they might use to their advantage down the line. Everything is transactional, even when it's disguised as friendship or love. The most dangerous aspect of the chronic manipulator is their ability to make you question your own perceptions. When you begin to sense something is off, when you start to notice the pattern, they are skilled at gaslighting, at making you feel like you're being paranoid or ungrateful. They'll remind you of all they've done for you, often with a wounded air that triggers your guilt. They'll reframe situations to make their manipulation seem like care, their control seem like concern. And because they are often genuinely charming and socially skilled, others may not see what you see, which further isolates you and makes you doubt yourself. Why must you not trust the chronic manipulator? Because every interaction has a hidden agenda. There is no authentic self beneath the masks they wear. They are performers, and the performance is so constant, so practiced, that they may no longer even know where the act ends and any genuine feeling begins. They cannot form real connections because real connection requires vulnerability, honesty, and a willingness to sometimes lose, to sometimes give, without expectation of return. The chronic manipulator is incapable of this kind of open-hearted relating. They are always calculating, always strategizing, always working an angle. To trust them is to volunteer yourself as a piece on their chessboard, and they will sacrifice you without hesitation if it serves their interests. The third pattern we must examine is perhaps the most dangerous in a collective sense, for it has justified some of humanity's greatest atrocities. The righteous crusader lives in a world of absolute certainty. They have found the truth, whether it be religious, political, moral, or ideological, and they have fused their identity so completely with this belief system that to question the belief is to attack them personally. There is no daylight between their sense of self and their ideology. They are their beliefs, and their beliefs are them. This fusion creates a psychological rigidity that makes genuine dialogue impossible and makes them capable of remarkable cruelty in service of their cause. When you encounter the righteous crusader, you may initially admire their conviction, their passion, their commitment to what they believe is right. In a world full of uncertainty and moral ambiguity, there is something attractive about someone who seems to have figured it all out, who stands firm in their principles. But watch what happens when you express even mild disagreement or ask probing questions. The temperature in the room changes. Their eyes harden. You are no longer a person to them in that moment. You are either someone to be converted or someone to be condemned. There is no middle ground, no possibility that you might both have pieces of truth, no acknowledgement that reality is complex and multifaceted. The psychology beneath the righteous crusader's certainty is actually rooted in profound fear. They are terrified of uncertainty, of the chaos and confusion that exists when we acknowledge we don't have all the answers. Their rigid belief system is not a sign of strength, but a defense mechanism, a fortress built against the existential anxiety that comes from truly grappling with life's complexity. The louder they proclaim their certainty, the more desperately they are trying to convince themselves. They cannot tolerate doubt because doubt feels like annihilation. If their beliefs are wrong, then who are they? What has their life meant? These questions are too threatening to face, so they double down, they become more extreme, they find enemies everywhere who must be opposed and defeated. Why must you not trust the righteous crusader? Because they will sacrifice people for principles. When you are dealing with someone who believes they possess absolute truth, you are dealing with someone who can justify anything in service of that truth. History is littered with the wreckage of such certainty. They cannot truly see you as you are, because they can only see you in relation to their ideology. Are you an ally or an enemy? Are you saved or damned? Are you enlightened or deluded? You exist only in these binary categories, and if you fall on the wrong side, they feel justified, even righteous, in causing you harm. The righteous crusader in your personal life may not commit atrocities, but they will slowly erode your sense of self through constant judgment, through the implicit or explicit message that you are wrong, that you need to be fixed, that your way of seeing the world is not just different, but inferior or dangerous. Life with a righteous crusader becomes exhausting because you are always being measured against an impossible standard and found wanting. Our fourth pattern takes us into territory where reality itself becomes unstable. The chronic liar has severed the connection between words and truth. For them, language is not a tool for communicating reality, but a tool for creating whatever reality serves their purposes in the moment. They mix truth and lies with such skill that even they may no longer know the difference. The most sophisticated chronic liars are not the obvious fabricators whose stories fall apart under scrutiny. They are the ones who weave truth and fiction so seamlessly that you cannot find where one ends and the other begins. They tell you things that are verifiable, mixed with things that are completely false. They create confusion, not through total deception, but through strategic distortion. What drives the chronic liar is often a profound insecurity and a fluid sense of self. They have learned that they can be whoever they need to be to get what they want or to avoid consequences. In one conversation, they are one person with one set of experiences and beliefs. In another conversation with different people, they are someone else entirely. They are chameleons, adapting their identity to whatever the situation requires. And here is what makes them particularly dangerous. In the moment they are telling you something, they believe it. They can pass lie detector tests because they have convinced themselves of the truth of their current narrative. There is no stable core, no consistent self, beneath the constantly shifting presentation. Living or working with a chronic liar is like trying to build a house on quicksand. There is no solid foundation. You cannot plan, you cannot trust your memories of past conversations, because they will deny saying what they said. You cannot build anything meaningful because nothing is stable. They will tell you one thing today and something completely different tomorrow, and when you point out the contradiction, they will look at you with genuine confusion or offense, as if you are the one who has misunderstood or misremembered. This is not merely frustrating, it is psychologically destabilizing. You begin to doubt your own perceptions, your own memory, your own sanity. Why must you not trust the chronic liar? Because without truth, there is no relationship. Relationships, whether personal or professional, are built on a foundation of reliable communication. We need to be able to trust that what someone tells us has some relationship to reality, that their words mean something consistent over time. With the chronic liar, this foundation does not exist. You are not relating to a person, but to a constantly shifting projection, a hologram that changes depending on the angle and the lighting. There is no there, no solid self you can actually know or connect with. Everything becomes performance, manipulation, strategic presentation, and you cannot build anything real with someone whose relationship to truth is purely instrumental. You will exhaust yourself trying to figure out what's real, trying to catch them in contradictions, trying to get them to be honest. But honesty requires a consistent self, and this they do not possess. I want to pause here and ask you something important. If you have found value in what we have explored so far, if you are beginning to see patterns you had not recognized before, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel, leave a like on this video, share it with someone who needs to hear these truths. This information has the power to protect people from years of unnecessary suffering, from toxic relationships that drain their energy and damage their sense of self. But it can only help people if it reaches them. The algorithm needs your engagement to show this content to others who are searching for these answers. So take a moment right now, hit that subscribe button, click the like button, drop a comment sharing which of these personality types you have encountered in your own life. Your engagement is not just support for this channel, it is an act of service to others who are still trapped in relationships with these patterns and do not yet understand what they are dealing with. Now, let us take a moment to gather ourselves before we continue. We have explored 4 distinct patterns: the perpetual victim who builds identity around suffering, the chronic manipulator who turns relationships into strategic games, the righteous crusader who sacrifices people for ideology, and the chronic liar who has no stable relationship with truth. Each of these types presents dangers that are now, I hope, becoming clear to you. You are learning to see beneath the surface, to recognize the mechanisms that drive destructive patterns of behavior. But we are only halfway through this exploration. What comes next are patterns that are perhaps even more subtle, more difficult to detect, and in some ways more personally damaging because they strike at the very core of your self-worth and your capacity for joy. The remaining personality types we will examine are masters of a different kind of destruction. They do not always announce themselves with obvious red flags. They often appear normal, even successful. But their impact on those close to them is corrosive, slowly eroding confidence, draining vitality, creating chaos. These are advanced patterns that require deeper psychological understanding to recognize and protect yourself against. If you found the first half challenging, what follows will demand even more honesty and courage from you, because chances are you will recognize these patterns in people you love, perhaps even in yourself. That recognition is painful, but it is also the beginning of wisdom. Steel yourself. Open your mind. Let us continue. The fifth pattern introduces us to a type of person who sees the world through a lens of pure utility. The user has reduced all human interaction to a simple calculation. What can this person do for me? They have no genuine interest in others as people, only as resources to be exploited. Every relationship is transactional. Every gesture of friendship or affection is strategic. They collect people the way others collect tools, each one serving a specific function, each one to be picked up when needed and set aside when their usefulness is exhausted. What makes the user particularly difficult to detect initially is that they can be extraordinarily charming and attentive when they want something from you. They make you feel special, valued, interesting. They remember details about your life, ask thoughtful questions, seem genuinely interested in your well-being. But pay close attention to the timing of this attention. Notice when they reach out. Notice what they need. Notice what happens when you are the one who needs something. The user is a master of the extraction game. They will mine your network for contacts, your knowledge for information, your resources for material benefit, your emotional energy for support, but they give nothing of real substance in return. Oh, they may perform reciprocity, doing just enough to maintain the appearance of friendship or relationship, but there is always a calculation beneath it. Every favor they do is an investment they expect to collect on with interest. They keep a mental ledger of debts and credits, and somehow that ledger always shows that you owe them more than they owe you. They have perfected the art of making withdrawal feel like deposit, of taking while making you feel like they are giving. Watch what happens when your usefulness to them diminishes. Perhaps you change jobs and no longer have access to the resources they valued. Perhaps you go through a difficult time and become someone who needs support, rather than someone who can provide it. Perhaps you simply run out of things they want. The warmth evaporates. The calls stop coming. They become mysteriously busy, unavailable, distant. And when you confront them, if you dare, they will act wounded, misunderstood, as if you are the one being unfair by expecting consistency and genuine care. They will reframe the relationship in a way that makes your expectations seem unreasonable. They will make you feel needy for wanting basic reciprocity and loyalty. Why must you not trust the user? Because their affection for you is entirely conditional on your utility to them. This is not friendship or love or any genuine human bond. It is a business relationship masquerading as something deeper, and the business is one-sided. The user suffers from a profound poverty of spirit. They accumulate contacts but have no true friends. They extract value from dozens of relationships but experience no real intimacy. They die surrounded by people they have used but fundamentally alone because they have never allowed themselves to actually connect with another human being as an equal, as an end in themselves, rather than a means to an end. To trust the user is to volunteer yourself for exploitation. They will take everything you offer and more, and when you have nothing left to give, they will discard you without a second thought, already moving on to the next source of supply. The sixth pattern takes us into darker psychological territory, into the realm of one of humanity's most corrosive emotions. The envious destroyer cannot tolerate the success, happiness, or good fortune of others. Understand clearly what envy is and what it is not. Envy is not the desire to have what another person has. That would be simple covetousness, which, while not admirable, is at least understandable. Envy is the desire that the other person not have what they have. It is the wish to see them brought down, to see their success tarnished, their happiness destroyed, their light dimmed. The envious person is tormented by the good fortune of others because it highlights what they perceive as their own inadequacy. Your success is their failure. Your joy is their pain. Your ascent feels like their descent. The envious destroyer is one of the most dangerous personality types because they are often hidden in plain sight, disguised as friends, family members, colleagues. They may even believe their own disguises. They tell themselves they are being helpful when they offer criticism disguised as concern. They tell themselves they are being realistic when they point out all the ways your plans might fail. They tell themselves they are protecting you when they discourage you from taking risks or pursuing opportunities. But underneath the helpful exterior is a desperate need to prevent you from rising above them, from achieving what they have not achieved, from experiencing the happiness that eludes them. Watch for the subtle signs. Notice how they react to your good news. Do they genuinely celebrate with you, or is there a slight hesitation, a quick shadow that crosses their face before they arrange their features into a smile? Do they immediately follow your good news with a caveat, a worry, a yes but that introduces doubt? When you are struggling, are they oddly energized, more present, more engaged? And when you overcome the struggle, does their energy wane? The envious destroyer will sabotage you in ways that are difficult to detect and even harder to prove. They plant seeds of doubt in your mind. They share your confidences with others in ways that damage your reputation. They accidentally create problems or obstacles. They damn you with faint praise, complimenting you in ways that actually undermine you. They are never obvious enough to be called out directly, but the cumulative effect of their subtle undermining can be devastating to your confidence and your progress. Why must you not trust the envious destroyer? Because your success causes them genuine psychological pain, and people in pain lash out, often unconsciously. They cannot help themselves. Your light threatens them, and they will work to extinguish it, not through direct confrontation, but through 1,000 small acts of sabotage and discouragement. The tragedy is that their envy does not actually improve their own situation. It is purely destructive, harming both you and themselves. But they are caught in a psychological trap, unable to do the hard work of improving their own lives, unable to feel genuine joy for others, caught in a bitter cycle of comparison and resentment. To allow the envious destroyer close access to your life is to invite subtle, constant undermining of your confidence and your capacity for joy. They are poison disguised as medicine, enemies disguised as friends. Our seventh and final pattern brings us to a type that creates destruction not through malice, but through an addiction to intensity. The chaos merchant cannot tolerate peace, stability, or calm. For them, equilibrium feels like death. They are addicted to the adrenaline of crisis, the drama of conflict, the intensity of emergency. There is always something wrong, always a fire to put out, always a disaster looming. If life becomes peaceful, they unconsciously create chaos to return to the state that feels normal to them. This is not a conscious decision. They genuinely believe the world is constantly falling apart around them. They do not see that they are the ones setting the fires they then frantically rush to extinguish. When you first encounter the chaos merchant, you may feel drawn to help them. They are often in the midst of some crisis that activates your protective instincts. There is an intensity to being around them, a sense that everything matters urgently, that you are needed, that your help is crucial. For some people, this intensity is intoxicating, especially if their own lives feel mundane or lacking in purpose. The chaos merchant makes you feel alive, important, essential. But pay attention to the pattern over time. Notice how one crisis resolves only to be replaced by another. Notice how moments of peace are short-lived, how calm never lasts. Notice how their stories always position them at the center of dramatic events, how they are always the victim of extraordinary circumstances, how their lives seem to be uniquely difficult in ways that defy probability. The chaos merchant operates from a deep psychological wiring that was often established in childhood. Perhaps they grew up in chaotic environments where crisis was normal, where the only time they received attention was during emergencies, where stability was rare or non-existent. They became addicted to the neurochemicals of stress, to the intensity of crisis mode. As adults, they recreate these conditions unconsciously because it is what feels familiar, what feels real. Calm registers as abandonment or emptiness. Stability feels wrong, dangerous, like the eye of a storm where you know the chaos will return. So they create it themselves, through impulsive decisions, through starting conflicts, through manufacturing crises. Living with or being close to a chaos merchant is exhausting. You are constantly in reactive mode, constantly dealing with their latest emergency, constantly being pulled into their storms. There is no space for your own needs, your own growth, your own peace. The relationship becomes defined by their crises, their dramas, their perpetual states of emergency, and when you try to establish boundaries or step back, they escalate, creating bigger crises that pull you back in. They make you feel guilty for wanting calm, selfish for prioritizing your own well-being, cruel for not being available for their endless needs. Why must you not trust the chaos merchant? Because they are fundamentally incapable of providing stability or support to you. They are drowning, and drowning people pull others under in their panic. They will drag you into their tempest, exhaust your resources, drain your energy, and then move on to the next crisis without pause or appreciation. They cannot be there for you when you need them, because they are always in their own crisis. They cannot celebrate your peace, because your peace highlights the chaos they live in. They cannot support your growth, because growth requires stability, and stability is what they fear most. To tie yourself to a chaos merchant is to volunteer for a life of perpetual emergency, of constant drama, of never-ending crisis management. You become a supporting actor in their never-ending tragic play, and the play never ends well. Now we arrive at the most crucial moment of this entire exploration. Everything we have discussed, every pattern we have examined, brings us to this singular point of decision. These 7 types exist. This is not theory or speculation. These are patterns that repeat across all cultures, all time periods, all social contexts. You have encountered them. You will encounter them again. The question is not whether these people exist, but how you will respond when you recognize them. And this is where many people stumble. They recognize the patterns, but fail to act on that recognition. They see clearly for a moment, and then they doubt themselves, they make excuses, they give another chance, they hope things will be different. This is where wisdom must meet courage. Recognizing these patterns requires wisdom. You must be honest with yourself about what you are seeing. You must trust your perceptions even when others do not see what you see. You must be willing to acknowledge painful truths, to see people you care about with clear eyes rather than wishful thinking. This is the first step, and it is difficult because we are taught to see the best in people, to give the benefit of the doubt, to believe in potential for change. These are not bad instincts, but they must be tempered with realism. Not everyone deserves your trust. Not everyone has earned access to your life. And some people, despite their potential, despite your love for them, despite your desire to help, are dangerous to your well-being. Once you have recognized the pattern, you must have the courage to admit what you see. This is harder than it sounds. It means acknowledging that you may have been deceived, that you may have invested time and energy in someone who does not value you, that you may have been wrong about someone important to you. The ego resists this. It wants to be right, to have made good choices, to not have wasted time. So we rationalize, we minimize, we tell ourselves stories that allow us to avoid the hard truth. We say they are going through a difficult time, that they will change, that we can help them, that we owe them loyalty. These stories may feel noble, but they are often forms of self-deception. The courage to admit what you see means accepting that you were wrong, that you need to change course, that comfortable illusions must be shattered in service of truth. Finally, you must have enough self-respect to act on what you know. This is the ultimate test. You can be wise enough to recognize the patterns. You can be courageous enough to admit the truth. But if you lack self-respect, you will still do nothing. You will stay in toxic relationships because you do not believe you deserve better. You will continue to be used because you do not value your own time and energy enough to protect them. You will tolerate manipulation, chaos, and betrayal because on some level you have internalized the belief that this is what you deserve, that this is the best you can expect. Self-respect is not arrogance or selfishness. It is the recognition that your life is valuable, that your time is limited, that your energy is finite, and that you have both the right and the responsibility to guard these precious resources carefully. Acting on your recognition means setting boundaries, even when doing so feels uncomfortable or harsh. It means creating distance from people whose patterns are destructive, even if you care about them. It means ending relationships that cannot be salvaged, even when doing so brings short-term pain. It means saying no, walking away, choosing yourself even when others call you selfish. This is not cruelty, this is clarity. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You are not required to sacrifice your peace, your progress, or your well-being to accommodate someone else's dysfunction. You can have compassion for someone's struggles while simultaneously protecting yourself from the consequences of their behavior. Let me be absolutely clear about something that often confuses people. Having boundaries and protecting yourself from destructive patterns does not mean you lack compassion. It does not mean you have given up on people or become hard-hearted. True compassion requires wisdom and discernment. Enabling someone's dysfunction is not compassionate. Allowing yourself to be manipulated or abused is not love. Staying in toxic relationships does not help anyone. In fact, sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for someone caught in these patterns is to refuse to participate in their drama, to hold up a mirror through your actions that shows them the consequences of their behavior. When you remove yourself from the dynamic, you remove one of the pieces that allows the pattern to continue. This can be the catalyst for change, though often it is not. And that is not your responsibility. The people we have discussed today, these 7 types, are often suffering themselves. The perpetual victim is trapped in a story that prevents them from claiming their own power. The chronic manipulator has never learned how to form genuine connections. The righteous crusader is imprisoned by their own rigid certainty. The chronic liar has lost connection with their authentic self. The user has never experienced real intimacy. The envious destroyer is tormented by their own feelings of inadequacy. The chaos merchant is addicted to crisis because calm feels empty. These are tragic figures in many ways. But their suffering does not obligate you to suffer alongside them. You can have compassion for their struggle while still protecting yourself from their impact. You can wish them well while keeping them at a distance. You can understand the origins of their patterns without making yourself available to be harmed by them. One final truth that must be spoken clearly. Patterns can change, but change requires recognition and genuine effort. It requires someone to see their own behavior clearly, to take responsibility for the harm they cause, and to do the difficult inner work necessary to transform. This happens, but it is rare. And it never happens because someone else rescued them, fixed them, or loved them enough. External pressure and external love can be catalysts, but the work of transformation must come from within. If you are waiting for someone to change, for the manipulator to suddenly become authentic, for the chaos merchant to find peace, for the envious destroyer to celebrate your success, you are likely to wait a very long time. People change when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. Sometimes that happens. Often it does not, and you cannot make that choice for them or control that timeline. So, what do you do with this knowledge? You become a student of human nature. You observe patterns in yourself and in others without judgment but with clarity. You recognize that seeing people accurately is not cynical but compassionate. You understand that protecting yourself is not selfish but necessary. You practice the difficult art of maintaining an open heart while also maintaining strong boundaries. You cultivate relationships with people who are capable of genuine reciprocity, who take responsibility for themselves, who can celebrate your success, who provide stability and support. You build a life with people who have done their own inner work, who are conscious and intentional, who bring light rather than drain it. This is not about perfection. Everyone has moments where they act from these patterns. The difference between someone having a temporary lapse and someone being fundamentally characterized by these patterns is frequency, intensity, and willingness to take responsibility. We all play the victim sometimes. We all manipulate occasionally. We all have moments of rigid certainty or small deceptions. The question is whether we catch ourselves, whether we apologize and correct course, whether we are doing the work to grow beyond these patterns. The people we have discussed today are not characterized by occasional lapses. These patterns are their default mode of operating. They are not mistakes, but strategies, not temporary states, but fundamental orientations to the world. Your life is too short and too precious to spend it navigating the minefields of people who cannot or will not see you clearly, who cannot or will not value you genuinely, who cannot or will not contribute to your well-being in meaningful ways. You deserve relationships that nourish you, that support your growth, that add to your life, rather than subtract from it. This is not asking too much. This is the bare minimum standard you should have for the people you allow into your inner circle. Everyone else can remain at a distance, pleasant acquaintances perhaps, but not intimates, not people you rely on, not people who have access to your vulnerabilities and your heart. There is a profound liberation that comes from seeing clearly, when you are no longer confused by charming words that contradict actions, when you are no longer making excuses for inexcusable behavior, when you are no longer hoping that this time will be different, you reclaim enormous amounts of energy. That energy can now be directed toward your own growth, your own goals, your own joy. The space previously occupied by toxic people and draining dynamics can now be filled with presence, with peace, with people who actually deserve you. This is not hardness of heart. This is clarity of vision. And clarity of vision is, perhaps, the most compassionate thing you can offer to yourself and, ultimately, to the world. The path forward is simple, but not easy. Watch. Listen. Trust your perceptions. Honor your discomfort when something feels off. Believe patterns more than words. Value consistency over intensity. Choose boring reliability over exciting chaos. Prioritize your own well-being without guilt. Set boundaries without apology. Walk away when necessary, without looking back. And build a life surrounded by people who have earned your trust, who reciprocate your care, who celebrate your light rather than trying to dim it. These people exist, but you will only find them if you clear the space currently occupied by those who do not deserve it. Don't forget to give a like or a hype and subscribe to the channel. Watch the next video to complete everything you just learned.